Hey guys, and welcome back to another reaction video. You know, prior to recording, I spent the entire effing day making an MMD model, most of which was spent on the fucking hair physics. 'Cause god fucking damn it. And that was also the biggest problem, and I fixed it while drunk, so I probably will not remember how I fixed it. And yes, I still am kinda drunk. Anyway, today we'll be reacting to SCP-353. So, yeah, little bit of information about this SCP. There are only 2 videos on YouTube about this specific SCP. This one in English and the other one in, might say, Japanese or Chinese, but since I don't speak either of those languages, I do not know for sure. Anyway, let's press play and see what's gonna happen, shall we?
The human body is sometimes seen as weak or frail looking through the lenses of disease. We look at things like cancer, the plague, HIV, malaria, common colds, and many other strains and assume that the decimation of our body is simply because those diseases are too strong for us to overcome. Well, maybe not the common cold, but you kind of get the point. The reality of the situation is our bodies have always had a nuclear option at their disposal, and if it could be controlled, in theory, we would be immune to anything and everything. The issue lies in focus for our bodies and knowing its attacker. In our minds, we may know how a disease progresses, what it does, and what it is attacking, but we aren't able to communicate with the rest of our immune cells to help in the fight. At least not yet, as CRISPR seems a little more promising, but that video is in my second channel, and we also might discuss it just a little bit in this video as well. So what if we could control exactly how our bodies respond to dangerous diseases meant to take us out? Could we, in theory, survive anything thrown at us and even harbor those diseases for our own goals? Well, I guess the real question is, what could stop a person from doing that who does have control over microorganisms? SCP-353, which is super nice and easy to say, is someone who is not only capable of these abilities concerning their own immune system, but also has the ability to control the dangerous diseases she houses within herself, and seemingly also has a sphere of influence on those around her concerning what sort of bacteria and viruses lurk within them. SCP-353 is considered to be a Keter class anomaly, dictating that should she be successful in her escape, it could be the end of humanity. She is a standard and very average 26-year-old female, and is said to have a normal physical capacity and average intelligence. This could be a blessing and a curse for a multitude of reasons, but we will get to that shortly. 353 is to be kept in an underground facility with negative air pressure at all times. In case you aren't aware, this is the standard practice among wet labs, meaning that if you are working with a dangerous microorganism, you need this negative air pressure. The reasoning behind this is that when a door opens, air flows into the lab versus out of the lab. This will keep the diseases within contained so that they aren't released. 353 is a biohazard threat level 4 being, which in labs, at least in our world, would be a biosafety level 4. In these labs, you essentially need a hazmat suit and a strict quarantine procedure in place, which may sometimes come at the sacrifice of the doctor or lab personnel currently working in the lab should anything be released. The issue with 353 is not her raw strength, cunning nature, ability to phase through walls, or teleport into other universes, but something as simply as the alteration of any disease that may exist around her or within her. Even something as innocuous as the common cold can be altered to great detriment to all personnel currently located within her presence. Originally, she was picked up in South Africa during the Ebola epidemic. She was seen traveling through the area willfully collecting strains of it, but not in some vial or petri dish, but utilizing her own body. Now, for most humans, this would be a life-ending event unless medical treatment was aggressively pursued, but she seemed to continue on with very little detriment to her own body. Upon being captured and questioned, a blood test was conducted to determine what exactly was going on with her. Over 1,000 different strains of infections were found within her, and the most notable ones being human immunodeficiency virus, or HIV, Ebola, Marburg, 67 different strains of the common cold, herpes simplex A, E. coli, cholera, bubonic plague, SARS, and malaria. More alarmingly, some of these infections in her had not
ticking
previously
time
been encountered
bombs
by
in
humanity
any
during more
case.
modern times or by any historical counts at that time. Due to this, it was concluded that she was actually altering the bacteria and viruses within her body in a deliberate attempt to make new forms of these deadly diseases. When interacting with 353, you would need a full hazardous material suit, gloves, and oxygen supply.
Make sure she doesn't have a nail file.
A disinfectant shower of decontamination spray before and after are standard procedure with SCP-353. The whole containment unit is to be kept underground at negative pressure and hermetically sealed at all times to prevent accidental contamination to the outside area. In case of a containment breach, all affected personnel are to be placed in immediate biohazard level 4 quarantine. Termination will be required in the possibility of an outbreak of one or more class 9
So they'll
infectious
just
agents.
shoot
Subjects
everybody.
should be fed 3 times a day as standard and provided with the minimum required comfort items such as a twin-size bed, a pillow, and a blanket. Clothing in the form of disposable surgical scrubs are to be provided as needed, but requests for items should otherwise be denied. Any outward signs of disease in the subject, such as rashes, boils, vomiting, or sickly pallor or demeanor, should be reported with haste. Since the appearance of symptoms in SCP-353 means a willful effort in her part, subject is to be subdued and questioned. Should SCP-353 need to leave its container facility for any reason, it is to be fitted with an explosive collar, time-release drug delivery device for dosage of euphoric substances, and biohazard containment.
Explosive
Should
collar
SCP-353
probably good idea.
breach containment emergency sterilization procedures up to and including incineration of the
emergency
area
sterilization?
Typically, 353 is not an overall difficult Keter class to contain. See, now I've said Keter and Keter, so nobody complain that I said it wrong, because otherwise I'll just go with the other one. But an issue begins to arise with this person, we will call it. It seems that not only can she alter and change the disease in herself, but also within others, and depending on her mood, she has a much larger range. Individuals interacting with her have been said to develop sickness despite precautions, meaning that an unforeseen force works within the woman to later change the coding and presentation of infectious microbes, which ultimately results in something that may have once been benign in you to begin spiraling well past what your immune system can naturally handle. Moving back to her own body, internally and through examinations done by doctors within the Foundation, the subject has been shown to store almost any infectious bacteria or viral agent within her body. Here, she is able to have direct control over it and change it. It should be noted that only the diseases native to humanity are able to survive and thrive within, showing that these diseases are actually dependent upon her cells for survival and replication, but somehow this does not lead to the detriment of her own body. So this raises the question, how could she be immune to all these diseases and not exhibit the general game and a normal person would experience, but also harbor them within herself? Well, as you know on this channel, I've got pretty much a hypothesis for everything, and considering I do have a background in microbiology, this is right up my alley and ripe for explanation. And it goes back to your own immune system and perhaps a symbiotic relationship coupled with a strong, controllable immune system. And I base this on the fact that she actually does exhibit symptoms should she be actively altering anything within her own body. As stated in the reports, SCP-353 seems to be immune from the symptoms of said infectious agents, but as long as she is only passively storing them. Her active, willful attempts to nurture, manipulate, or change the infectious agents while they remain in her body cause her to manifest symptoms ranging from mildly annoying to severe. Symptoms only last as long as she is actively inducing a change in the quantity or quality of the infectious agent, and thus rarely last longer than a few hours. So let's take a look at this, specifically the manifestation of her symptoms. What are symptoms of a disease? Typically, these will arise by the immune system actively fighting a disease and your body is compensating and trying to destroy the invader. Fever, vomiting, diaphoresis, fatigue all indicate an active war taking place within your meat suit. If she's creating these, then why is her body responding?
My meat
Understand
suit.
this, we need to actually learn about our immune system and how it does what it does, because you know I gotta at least bring some just standard biology to pretty much everything I do. Deep within the lymphatic system exists the lymphocytes. Lymphocytes are a form of white blood cell that are made up of B cells and T cells. B cells exist in the billions and are all unique to specifically one type of ailment. This is determined by basically random chance. Your body just makes a ton of these cells and says good luck to you. When an infection within your body begins,
well,
dendrites will
you
scoop
too,
up
buddy.
leftover material destroyed by the innate immune system and bring it back to the lymph nodes. Upon doing so, this material will float through the lymph node, passing the billions of B cells with different antigen markers on the surface. By chance, and usually fairly effective, one cell will latch onto it with its antigen marker and capture a piece of the invader. Upon this happening, it will migrate and begin cellular mitosis at a rapid rate. Thousands of it will be created over the next few days, and it will begin releasing antibodies into the system to attack specifically this type of invader. When the antibodies lock on, this will make them susceptible and rendered virtually useless. Other immune cells will then come in at this point and destroy the foreign body. The T cells are similar in some respect, but usually focus more on virus-infected
T cells?
When a virus enters a cell, it will begin hijacking the replicating mechanisms such
Like
as
the
reverse
T-virus?
transcriptase to begin copying its ribonucleic
Wink,
acid
wink.
or
Nudge,
RNA.
nudge.
Later, it will move on to the ribosomes in most cases, which will build it a protein structure in which it can exit the cell. When it does this, it will be released from the cell and go on to infect more cells in the surrounding area. While this is happening, certain MHC complexes are presenting on the cellular membrane, which is a target for T cells. And these MHC complexes are actually because of the virus invading the cell. So think of it this way, the MHC complexes are there to basically get the virus to leave the cell, because the virus needs the MHC complex, and then the T cells latch onto that. We go out and they go in. Clever bastards. T cells in their naive state are
Hey, a bit of
introduced to
Halo.
an antigen-presenting cell that serves as a scout for our bodies. One T cell that happens upon the cell will match. It will then begin its replication process much like that of the B cells. It will then mature and move on to the site of infection. It will search the cells for the MHC complexes that link up correctly with its markers, and upon finding one, the trap is sprung. It will release cytotoxic material into the infected cell, destroying it and stopping it from producing any more viruses within the future. Now, I want you to be aware this is a grossly simplified version over what actually happens, but it gives you an idea of what is happening within SCP-353. Her body is reacting to the diseases within, but it's not taking her out quite like it does you or I. So this is where her ability to manipulate diseases comes into play. Presumably, 353 is able to affect the actual coding of a disease and thus can force it to present differently and have different effects on the body. So take a baseline health of this woman. Her B cells and T cells, for what she already has, are well aware of the 1,000 different ailments living within her. Thus, they have formed a staunch defense against the self-infection. When she ends up making something new or increasing the quantity, however, there is a lag effect within her body, and it is sent well past the capacity of what her own immune system can handle, at least for the moment. However, through adaptation and cellular mitosis, her body is able to catch back up and suppress the effects once again. However, in that short window, she does present as sick because the cells within her body are reacting to the increased viral load or bacterial load, but due to the immune system and what I would probably assume is way more bolstered than ours, she is able to handle it. So let's discuss what she would even need. Firstly, many viruses change rapidly, such as HIV. It is constantly changing, if not suppressed and controlled. Things like Ebola just completely make their way through your body with or without an immune system. And like
humanity got
change every
infected
year,
with
rendering your
HIV
T-cells from last year
because
completely
someone
useless.
clapped
Because of this,
monkey
when she changes a
cheeks.
disease, her B cells and T cells would need to be notified almost immediately. So this would indicate two things. First, she would need a specific cell that is actually producing new versions of this disease. And for this to happen, it would almost be a sacrificial cell, because the cell would need to basically rupture at the end of this for this to be successful. This would explain why only human diseases, though, can exist within her, as it needs a human cell to create it. Secondly, this cell would have to be very close to the lymphatic system so that the T cells and B cells would be made aware of this new disease. This could work almost like a vaccination system at its source, allowing the cells to develop a plan of attack before the disease even gets out. While learning, however, the body would still be exhibiting symptoms of sickness, as this was completely new. But would even this be enough? Within each individual cell, there would also need to be a mechanism that would be able to protect the cell from this infection concerning her main body, otherwise she could still just flatline out. So what might this mechanism be? Well, look no further than the mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of the cell. Thanks, public school. Now, how do I do taxes again? Anyway, so the mitochondria actually has its own DNA, if you didn't know. It appears that long ago a eukaryotic cell absorbed a bacterial cell, and instead of breaking it down for food, we entered into a symbiotic relationship with it. So based upon this, our cells are quasi-compatible with bacterial cells under the right conditions. And you know I gotta do it, enter CRISPR. Clustered, regularly interspaced, short palindromic repeats. This mechanism exists within bacterial cells and oceans to protect it from invading viruses. When a virus injects its RNA, CRISPR and the Cas9 protein complex will read it and destroy it. So my hypothesis on this is this, that at some point, perhaps a natural flow of evolution, her cells were exposed to a bacteria containing CRISPR and Cas9. Upon this happening, the cells entered a symbiotic relationship. This would protect her cells from infection by dangerous viruses, but this would also raise another point of protection from her own diseases. Should CRISPR exist within all cells, or is even just free-floating as a complex within her blood and within the cellular matrix, the information can be transferred from B to T cells. And this brings me to my next point. Remember how I said that our immune system can basically, if guided, make us immune to almost anything? Should we be able to actively make ourselves aware of an invader and what it looks like utilizing our big brainy brains, we could make our B cells and T cells much more prepared rather than relying on chance. We could tell them, hey, these are the markers, look for this, and destroy it, rather than relying on
that would
ourselves
be
to
too
manipulate the
easy.
situation. Essentially, we would become the masters of our own health utilizing CRISPR in this manner. So I believe this is precisely what's happening with SCP-353. She has a form of immunity brought on by perhaps an outside mechanism not usually found within our bodies. As such, she is able to survive with any disease that would be afflicting her. But why am I harping so heavily on it? Because this is like kind of ties a lot of this together. It is assumed that she is 26, but not much is known about her. Inside of her body lurks a clue to maybe how old she actually is. She possesses the flu, specifically the Spanish flu of 1918. Where could she have gotten this? A cave? A really old person? Made it herself? Well, I don't really believe it's any of these options. I think she was there. The reasoning is, with CRISPR, increased longevity may actually be quite possible. As a cell divides, our DNA gets changed and damaged through random errors. Our telomeres also get shortened until eventually the process causes a cellular replication to begin cutting into the good DNA that is quite necessary for our survival. This is why as we age, we get cancers and tend to get more sick because our immune system gets more run down. It sucks, but that's just kind of the way of life right now. However, CRISPR is also known to repair DNA and in theory could be used to lengthen telomeres. What does this do? Well, it quite literally stops you from aging. With this internal mechanism, she might be that old, but she's not really physically that old. Coupled with the fact that CRISPR can naturally change DNA and has the ability to read RNA to cut it, who's to say that the same mechanism couldn't also be used to change the diseases she makes naturally? If she can alter her own DNA, why not the diseases that use our cells? To me, this seems more than likely the case. In fact, it seems to almost be exactly the reasoning. The human body is not all that used to CRISPR, as you could probably imagine, so when a disease arises, our cells aren't immediately protected against it. So this new form that CRISPR isn't alerted to would essentially inspire an immune response. But the stronger immune system coupled with the invulnerability of her cells would quickly cause this response to stop as the body is given the all clear and continues to function with little detriment. Another thing to note about 353 is her ability and range concerning her mood. Sometimes she can change those around her, or at least what's inside them, but she retains no memory concerning her body. Like her body doesn't remember it, of what this disease that she was inspiring. That would mean that it's limited function. It's not telekinesis or manipulation of a meat suit, but possibly something as simple as an airborne disease. The CRISPR contained within her body may have natural pathological tendencies upon exiting the body and entering a new host. It takes what's already there after entering the mouth or nasal passage and begins to turn it into something it was never meant to be. This is why suits are most effective and decontamination protocols will usually work, because this is a physical ability rather than a mental one utilizing energy. Otherwise, she would be able to affect those that were behind the glass watching her. Based on this, it's been said that she is able to cure diseases as much as cause them. When asked why she does what she does, she simply stated, "Because I can." This sense of apathy towards a common human would, in my mind, lend credence to the advanced age idea. As we age, see more things, people tend to drop the save the world mentality in favor of much calmer demeanor. With enough time passed, I could see how she would become a little bit apathetic to the plight of the common man, considering she has seen it all before and yet humanity is still there. On top of this, the curse and blessing of her average intelligence means that maybe she isn't maliciously trying to end the human race, but also can see no benefit in helping her fellow Homo sapiens crawl from the muck of disease. So this woman known as Vector has essentially deemed this to be fun, so why not have a little fun after all this time? So anyways, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed. I actually had a blast covering this one.
Not gonna lie, but this was actually really interesting and way more informative when it comes to these SCPs. But to be honest, not what I expected. In a good way, though. But opinions may differ, you know? I mean, I can't vouch for what you guys think of it. But I do think it's strange that there are only 2 videos on the entirety of YouTube about this SCP. I mean, if someone watching this is considering making like an SCP video, try this one. I mean, there are only 3 videos about it. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video of whatever I'll be making. And if you hear buzzing in the background, that's an aquarium. Yeah. Anyway, Bye.